All right, I see that folks are still joining, but we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to today's discussion on how state systems and institutions are boldly reimagining the college admissions process. My name is Lauren Norton. I am an Associate Director at Education Strategy Group, or ESG. ESG is a mission-based strategic consulting firm that works at the intersection of K-12, higher education, and the workforce to promote economic mobility. I am fortunate that I've had the opportunity over the past year and a half to work and learn alongside an inspiring group of individuals who will be facilitating today's webinar. We have Melanie Heath from Lumina Foundation, who launched the National Great Admissions Redesign Challenge. Mark Duffy from Research for Action, who will be sharing a draft typology of admissions innovations. Daniela Carrillo from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, one of our planning grantees, and Ginger Reyes from California State University, one of the implementation grantees. As we are presenting today, please feel free to use the Q&A feature if you have any questions or reflections you would like to share with us, and we'll try to respond to those in real time or in our follow-up. And with that, I will pass it to Melanie to get us started.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here. I'm really excited to talk about this work. Again, my name is Melanie Heath, and I lead Lumina Foundation's work around post-secondary access. And before we talk specifically about the Great Admissions Redesign, I want to just spend a moment kind of talking about some of what we're seeing nationally, um, which is really like a unique set of challenges and opportunities in higher education right now. First, the demographic cliff is upon us. And what this means is that just 18 years ago, fewer babies were born. And so there are just fewer high school graduates to actually enroll in our post secondary institutions. We've also seen year-over-year declines in freshman enrollment following the pandemic. And if you look at the chart on the right, you'll see that those have increased slightly since then, but we're still not at pre-pandemic enrollment levels. We're also in this moment nationally where we're experiencing waning public trust around the value of higher education and also concerns around affordability. Within the admissions ecosystem itself, there's a lot of changes too. So we're seeing shifting test optional policies for admissions. So post-pandemic, nearly all institutions went to test optional. Some have since returned, but we're still, the vast majority of institutions are still test optional. In 2023, the Supreme Court did ban the practice of race-conscious admissions practices. And so that threw further confusion into the admissions ecosystem. And then the backdrop against all of this is really the volatility at the federal level, including federal funding. And so we kind of looked at all of these at Lumina, and we felt like despite all of these challenges, we really do have this really unique opportunity to fundamentally shift the admissions process and transform it from a gatekeeper focused on exclusivity to a gateway, an inclusive gateway to post-secondary and also to economic prosperity. So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing within the admissions and enrollment process. We know that students experience incredible barriers within this process, bureaucratic barriers and red tape and misaligned systems. So a survey of students aged 16 to 22 found that over half of them say that applying to college has been more stressful than anything else they have done academically. And more than three-quarters feel that the college admissions process is too complex. And I think those of us who work in college access know that complexity in process harms access. It requires time, resources, and social networks to navigate a complex process. And I think if you think about the moment we're in right now, this moment of kind of questioning the value of higher education, we're also finding that complexity in process can also destroy trust. And it kind of makes sense, right? If your first touch point with a system is mired in complexity, if you have to continually prove that you're worthy to enter the system, if you have to pay for the privilege to be considered for that system, I think it really does speak to this overemphasis on complexity that we're seeing within the admissions space. So researchers have named this admissions process, they've called it a gauntlet, right? And so they're thinking about what are the ways we can disentangle this gauntlet. What they found, it was really centered around three things. So proactivity informing students of their options before they apply. Automation is about leveraging data and technology to reduce the burden on students and on practitioners. And then also transparency, so making sure that they're communicating clearly and upfront with students. So this concept of redesigned and simplified admissions is quickly gaining momentum across the country. And I'll put that into a little bit of context for you. So for the high school class of 2026, 2.4 million students will have the opportunity to access college through a redesigned admissions process. And that represents over 60% of the high school graduating class. And that does not include private sector solutions such as Common Apps Direct Admissions Project or Niche Direct Admissions. And so this has proliferated across the country. And it's grown so quickly that we haven't always been able to research the effectiveness of these. We have seen early research in direct admissions programs does show some promise. So many of you know Idaho was the first to do direct admissions back in 2016, and researchers found that direct admissions in Idaho increased enrollment between 4 to 8%, and it also increased enrollment of in-state students between 8 and 15%. So it does show early promise in direct admissions. The other thing it showed was that enrollment gains were concentrated at open access institutions. So direct admissions has been proven to work most or best for students who are on kind of that go or no go bubble, who haven't quite decided if they're going to go on to college after high school. So more research needs to be done, but it does seem like there's early promise in a lot of these admissions programs. So in 2023, Lumina decided to launch the Great Admissions Redesign, where we basically asked the country for their best ideas on how to fundamentally simplify admissions processes. We were blown away by the response. We got more than 70 applications across 32 states and territories, and we're really excited to award these 7 grants. So we had larger grants that were called implementation grants that were really about taking a proven project and scaling it. And those went to Northern Arizona University, California State University System, and the Illinois Board of Higher Education. Planning grants were grants that were supporting really vision setting and planning for a future admissions innovation. And those went to the Kentucky Council on Postsecondary Education, the Louisiana Board of Regents, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and the Washington Student Achievement Council. And we know that admissions innovations don't exist in a bubble. There are a ton of implications for them. So there's implications around data, a ton of work around communications. How are we actually talking about this? How are you involving partners in the project? How are we researching it? And so we at Lumina were really excited to partner with these 4 groups to really have this ecosystem of support around our grantees. And we partnered with the Data Quality Campaign, Education Strategy Group, Research for Action, and a communications firm called Trendy Minds. And with all of that, we were able to provide kind of wholesale support for our grantees as they embarked on their admissions redesign. And with that, I believe I will turn it back over to Lauren to talk about the lessons learned from the Great Admissions Redesign.
Thanks so much, Melanie. I am really excited to be able to share some of the key insights that we have gleaned from the Great Admissions Redesign grantees over the past year. If you are interested in diving deeper, we encourage you to check out our full lessons learned report, which we shared in advance of this webinar, and make sure that we have it in the follow-up as well. And I see that Jordan just dropped it in the chat. So our first lesson was that admissions redesign is about more than increasing access. If we want to go to the next slide, it extends far beyond a singular application process and meets students all along their educational journey. So we saw grantees as they designed and implemented their admissions innovations, incorporating earlier outreach and navigational support as early as middle school, providing transition support before matriculation, things like summer bridge programs, and they also extended coverage to adult and working learners, particularly around the transfer space. Related, we also saw many, if we want to go back to a slide, many grantees theorize that intentionally and thoughtfully pairing direct or guaranteed admissions with other elements of the college going experience, so financial aid, transfer, or dual enrollment, could lead to increased long-term impact. So I'll give you an example from Washington State. They plan to notify students that are eligible for SNAP benefits as early as 10th grade that they are eligible for the state's Washington College Grant. Washington College Grant offers award amounts up to the full tuition and for most fees at their public institutions. And this notification will eventually be paired with admissions offers for the state's guaranteed admissions program for eligible 12th graders. So they're really trying to find the synergy between their existing guaranteed admissions program along with their state-based financial aid. Our next lesson is around policy. So states and systems have taken multiple different paths to formalizing their redesign efforts, from legislation to local partnership agreements between districts and institutions to participation in existing initiatives such as Common App's pilot program that Melanie mentioned earlier. And as some of our grantees discovered, within the same state, all three can be true, which creates a need for alignment and coherence across multiple discrete efforts. Legislative action has multiple benefits. It can drive urgency, align systems, secure funding, to name a few. However, some initiatives we've seen thrive without it. So Melanie mentioned Idaho a little bit earlier. They are often regarded as being at the forefront of direct admissions. And while they do have a unique governance structure that makes this possible, their program has been operating for over a decade without formal legislation. Minnesota, Connecticut, Tennessee, and others have also recently launched their programs outside of legislation. And I think we've also seen across the country that even if legislation doesn't kind of kickstart the program at the outset, legislation can later be passed to help bolster or catalyze it. So ultimately, states should consider their unique context when deciding on whether or not to pursue a legislative route, and we have a few of those examples that you'll see here. And on the next slide, regardless of the approach, it is essential to share a clear and compelling vision for simplification to all stakeholders. You'll see some of those rationales that our grantees communicated to different stakeholders here. Admissions redesign is inherently a change management process. We heard that time and again from grantees. Effective redesign efforts necessitate breaking down the silos within institutions. So thinking about how to bring together staff from admissions, from financial aid, from enrollment management, as well as leveraging partnerships with K-12 and community-based organizations. Additionally, all of our grantees centered student and other stakeholder voice in their design. Collectively, they facilitated over 150 interviews and focus groups, sent surveys to over 2,000 students and parents. They developed student journey maps, conducted message testing, and also developed compelling outreach campaigns, some of which we link in our report, and you can see the outputs of those. Our third lesson is that automation starts with data. So we cannot streamline our admissions process without streamlining our data systems. Every grantee grappled with data, both as a powerful enabler and a significant barrier. So thinking about how to navigate FERPA compliance, how to build the appropriate infrastructure, even in states that had really strong statewide longitudinal data systems, for how they can have more timely, accurate, and secure cross-sector data sharing. I'd offer California as a standout example. You'll hear from Ginger a little bit later, but the California College Guidance Initiative, or CCGI, is the only statewide college and career readiness platform in the country that links to the K-12 student record, which enables some of that automation. And it also provides counselors with dashboards to be able to track student progress along the application process to help tailor their individualized support. Data Quality Campaign has issued multiple helpful resources that dive deeper into some solutions, so would encourage you to explore those if you're interested in learning a little bit more about data. On the next slide, data also plays a valuable role in bolstering storytelling. Admissions redesign is still a fairly new concept. That momentum that we heard Melanie talk about really has only happened in the past few years. And so the field needs a stronger evidence base for why this work matters. Our grantees looked beyond thinking about enrollment to think about how they can collect data to integrate into their case making on things like persistence and completion, awareness of the value of higher education, as well as student self-perceptions of being college ready. And our next lesson is around the promise of technology. So technology plays a crucial role in advancing the efficiency and transparency of admissions innovations, and they offer really powerful tools to both students and to practitioners. So the first technology that we saw was centralized application portals. So thinking about Cal State Apply or Illinois' use of the Common App, those allow students to access applications to multiple institutions in a single place and simplify data management for states and institutions on the back end. Another technology that grantees investigated was the use of automated transcripts. Automated transcripts can help to reduce administrative burdens, minimize errors, and ultimately accelerate admissions decisions to students. And lastly, advising platforms such as My Texas Future or Kentucky's Futurity. They can help to ensure that students receive timely, actionable information tailored to their academic profiles. Several of our grantees are also exploring how to effectively and ethically integrate the use of AI to further personalize and simplify their efforts. And last but certainly not least, we know that practitioner champions are essential. So school counselors, advisors, and other community-based organizations are really vital to helping students understand and act on admissions opportunities. I think we all know that it is more about just getting students in. It's also about supporting them in finding their best match and fit. And so that's where some of these trusted adults come in. Recognizing the importance of building a ground game, one of our grantees, the Louisiana Board of Regents, recently launched a statewide college access network of intermediaries from across the state. And in their first year, they leveraged their work through Great Admissions Redesign around promoting admissions as its leading priority for collective action across the state. So overall, we've been really excited to see the movement around admissions redesign. It's gaining ground nationally. The work of our 7 grantees plus dozens of other efforts across the country, I think for me, demonstrate that change not only is possible, but it is already in progress. So now is really the time for state systems institutions to think about how they can improve their own admission systems, to think about how they can move from being gatekeeper to gateway, and ultimately how they can build lasting pathways to post-secondary access and success for students in every community. And so with that, I am going to turn it to our true experts here. We're going to hear from 2 of our grantees. So first up, Danielle Carrillo from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lauren, and thank you to all who have been able to contribute to this awesome project. Texas has been able to do this work through the planning grant that we received through the Lumina Foundation. Despite us receiving a planning grant, we also got an opportunity to implement all at the same time. So within our first year of implementation and planning all at the same time, Texas has already utilized the foundation of what was already in place with guaranteed admissions with the top 10%. Legislation allowed that for top 10% to happen and have institutions buy into this idea of guaranteed admission. With that, we leveraged that already built-in system to how can we expand access to guaranteed admission and other methods. And so that's what led us to the creation of My Texas Future, which is a career and college readiness platform that we integrated that is free to use for all Texans. Whether you're in K-12 or adult learners, it's really an informative tool in that regard. We most identified that direct admissions would best fit in this informational platform. One of the unique challenges that Texas definitely encounters along the way is that we do not have a centralized data system. So our biggest question is, how do we overcome the challenges of not having the centralized data system to have access to the K-12 information and opt-in process? So we allowed our platform to be utilized with self-reported data, which granted us to provide greater access to all Texans in a volunteered way, to encourage discovery and implementation of what could be for them and figure out what public institutions throughout Texas they could possibly receive guaranteed admission outside of that top 10%. It took a lot of work working with institutions to build that buy-in and showing them that there was already systems in place locally within their own institutions that allowed them to buy into the process of direct admissions. So with this centralized hub, it's just building natural progression into allowing access to expand this idea of guaranteed admission, but beyond the top 10%, which just grants greater access to all Texans. Like Lauren mentioned, legislation has played a really big impact in Texas opportunities to expand direct access to direct admissions, and also to just spread this idea that that access is important. So as of recently in May of 2025, a legislation Senate Bill 2314 was passed, which allows us to implement an opt-in form process for high schoolers starting in the academic year of 2026-2027. This will allow us to have greater implementation in the school districts and have greater access and communication starting from 9th grade about direct admissions all the way to 12th grade. This also allows us to increase our partnerships not only with higher education institutions, but also with our other state agencies across the board that do serve directly to the K-12 systems, like our Texas Education Agency, which is going to support this process of implementation of the opt-in form in the K-12 system. This also allows us to further explore how can we create a greater network within the possibilities of creating a centralized data system. That's probably one of the continuous challenges that we will foresee until we are able to continue to buy that further buy-in. But as we see results obtained from direct admissions and the utilization of My Texas Future along with Apply Texas, hopefully this will continue to support the work in expanding access to all Texans. Another form that we have utilized in doing buy-in with our stakeholders, not only educators, but also parents and families, which is our direct source, is by participating in marketing and communications, not only internally, but also externally throughout Texas. Clicks utilizing Meta, Google Search, YouTube, Rich Media have accounted for 19% of website users on My Texas Future, which has driven digital ads to access to over 5,000 career quiz completions, which then leads to 234 direct completions of direct admission opt-in just from these ads alone, and then even leading to students creating accounts to save that information both on direct admissions and any other features related to that. Ultimately, My Texas Future is the portal that leads students to application and guides them through that entire process, which is Apply Texas. We hope to see a lot of more future collaboration throughout other state agencies, throughout other stakeholder partnerships, but truly the work cannot be done if we aren't able to move forward with data utilization and collection, in addition with counselor support along the way. Some challenges that we now foresee moving forward are how are we going to continue to support our counselor systems as we implement this opt-in process in the school districts and no longer a voluntary process on your own. So we're excited to see what's to come, but we know that the support without the legislation would not be possible without continuous support of the state looking to expand access to higher education initiatives.
Thank you so much, Danielle. It's been so exciting to be able to see how quickly and how thoughtfully Texas has been implementing its redesign efforts. You all have been, I think, fast and furious in the extent to which you have been able to scale. The impact of your work has been really, really impressive. All while Texas has a lot of other things going on. And so I know you spoke to the integration across, right, on-course, on-ramps, all of the different kind of advising and college access efforts that Texas has going on, and using My Texas Future as a centralizing hub for that, I think is really smart.
But
All right, next we are going to hear from our implementation grantee. So excited to hear from Ginger Reyes from CSU.
Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to present a little bit about the California State University and what we've done with direct admissions. So for those of you familiar with California, we are governed by the California Master Plan, and the goal is that we serve the top 1/3 of every California high school graduating class. Direct admissions allowed us to raise awareness of the opportunities available in the California State University and help reinforce to students that college is possible. Our partnership with the California College Guidance Initiative was key. Next slide, please. We allowed us to have the ability to leverage the californiacolleges.edu platform and the tool. We'll talk a little bit about the tool itself, but the legislation also required for every public high school student to be issued a free account. So students have the ability to already log in to California colleges to be able to help with their journey towards pursuing career and college opportunities. Next slide, please. So what is californiacolleges.edu? It's our state's California's official college and career planning platform. Benefits for the students include career planning, college planning, financial aid, and specifically progress tracking. So students can enter in their coursework that they are taking in their high school coursework, and it allows them to track if they are on track to meet the minimum requirements to get into a California State University. As well, it helps high school counselors to be able to identify those students who might be missing something to allow intervention to occur earlier. And this tool can begin as early as the 9th grade. Next slide, please. We have a partnership with our Riverside County Office of Education. They were one of our first early adopters of this, not only utilizing the californiacolleges.edu platform, but also with our pilot program with direct admissions. Next slide. We entered into a data sharing agreement with Riverside County Office of Education, where they were able to use the data and be able to supply it to us in regards to the contact information of students for us to be able to outreach to them. And so what students received when they were communicated with us about the opportunity available of being admitted to the CSU is these are examples of the mailers that received that informed students that congratulations, you've been admitted, and here's what you need to do. It allowed them to enroll, link their California Colleges account to their Cal State Apply application. So the information that they provided in their application would automatically, when linked, help complete their application, which helped expedite the completion of submitting their application. And they were able to submit their application, respond to additional questions such as their major, and that directed them of here's some easy steps for what you need to do. And then we actually followed up with students a couple months later with information on financial aid and the affordability of the students' affordability of the CSU. So these materials were sent to the home to make sure not only the student received it, but also that the parents can see it, as we all are aware that the college churning process is a very family supported network for students. Next slide. Some of the results that we had out of our pilot program, which we're very proud of, and we're excited to see as this continues to expand, is as a result of working with the Riverside County Office of Education, we had over 17,000 students that received a direct admissions mailers, and we saw a 22% increase of students starting an application through Cal State Apply, with over 14% choosing to apply to one or more of the California State University campuses, and had an increase in compared to our previous years of students being admitted to at least one CSU campus that they applied to. And then we are currently in the process of getting the final data, but the students from last year who had committed to attending a California State University campus, we had about 3,000 in fall 2024, and for this upcoming fall 2025, at the time that we had sent the mailers out in around May, we were around the 4,500 mark already committing to a CSU. So we will continue to monitor that data as this is currently the first week of classes for quite a bit of our California State University campuses. And so seeing where we're at from now and census date of looking at the number of the students who had committed to see when we're talking about the enrollment funnel of the students from the applicant state, the prospect stage, applicant stage, all the way to the committed stage. We'll be looking at that. Next slide. There's a number of lessons learned that we have here, which I'm not going to go through all of them, but one of the things that we had seen and others have mentioned is related to the data. Having schools and school districts start early with student data review was key to making sure what we were finding is that some students didn't look like they were admissible, but it turned out there was a coding that had to do with a coursework that students might have been taking that had nothing to do with the student, but coding from a district level of what they were giving to California colleges, that with a slight change, the student was now admissible. So this student data data review was key with schools and school districts, starting that early. And having that data early also helped not only the CSU, but also the counselors. We talk about the work that it puts on them, but they were also able to see in advance any students they needed to intervene with, whether it be sitting down with them to talk options, to changing their slight schedule because maybe they were off by 1 or 2 courses. But on top of the data for the counselors, what was key also in the lessons learned was communication. We had multiple meetings with counselors from Riverside County of Office of Education to provide them periodic updates and answer their questions, to know that we're supporting them in this process. And that communication consists of multiple times of repeating the process to say, okay, now that we've sent these mailers out, what is the next things that we need to do, to even providing them samples of the communication so they knew what to expect when their students were coming in with these type of mailers to say what this is. So it's not just the data that we were looking at. Quantitative data spoke to us as well, but we really talked about what were the stories behind the data that stood out for us. In particular, one of them was, I never thought I would be eligible to attend a four-year university. So having these mailers sent to the families really opened the eyes for the students to see that college was possible for them and being able to attend a university. Some of it also was families weren't aware, and they assumed that they only had one route to go, which was their community college as their option. So being able to identify these students in advance allowed the students to have choice and be able to pursue what would be the best option for them. So this is a long road that we've done for the year, and this is a project we're continue to evolve. But this was just kind of our brief in this 1 year of this program. This kind of spoke volumes of answering the question of, yes, did we do this? Should we do this again? And it was, yes, we're going to do this. And we thought the data to us spoke to what our mission of the CSU was. It helped reinforce what we're doing to help students and their families and helping them pursue college awareness and not only the options that were available in the CSU. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ginger. I think the point that you raised on this last slide is really critical. I think there's a misconception that admissions redesign efforts are geared towards students who are already intending to go to college. Melanie spoke to this at the top of the call around those bubble students, but I think CSU has really demonstrated the power of some of these innovations to serve those students who maybe are interested in college but don't know if it's the right fit or if they would be eligible. And this can be the kind of next push to be able to get them to consider their post-secondary option. So thank you for sharing that. So important. So I think we have maybe just a couple minutes left before we'll hand it over to Mark. So if I can ask you just maybe one final question to share some final words with everyone. Would love to hear what's next. So this isn't the end of your story, hopefully just the beginning. So would love to hear from both of you. Maybe we can start with Daniela around what you're most excited about for the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's really two key parts that I think Texas is most excited about. It's definitely expanding our access to data, and hopefully with legislation and the support of partnering with the Texas Education Agency and other Texas Education Exchange agencies, it will allow us to just have greater outreach to students. Like Ginger mentioned, communication is key. And if we can further reach out via direct communication in the districts, that would be incredible. I think the other aspect that we're really excited about and hopefully we'll continue, we'll start exploring very soon, is how do we expand this beyond just public four-year institutions. Texas is a very large state with a very large number of varying institutions, both two-year colleges, community colleges, technical colleges, and so on and so forth. I believe there are over 250 plus institutions, both private and public, in the state of Texas. And how can we expand that outreach utilizing direct admissions? It's all about visibility, access, and opportunity for all of these students within Texas. And we cannot just do that with limiting it only to a certain type of institution. So being able to expand that will provide greater access to students who may need additional resources that cannot be provided just by public institutions, but also offering a variety of resources to students who may be more in rural areas of Texas that may not be looking for that suburban or city experience, and providing more information about what does college actually mean for students in the long run.
And for the CSU, as we continue to expand direct admissions to other districts and eventually statewide, we are also looking at the other alternative pathways to coming to the California State University system. So we do have students where they may, for their own personal reasons, but also for academic reasons, they may not be able to arrive to the CSU coming straight out of high school. So the next stage is, knowing that we have students who might fall into that area already, is how can we communicate with them and pursue, inform them of the other opportunities that are available with the CSU. For example, in the CSU, we have our transfer planner. Tied to that is our transfer success pathway program, which offers guaranteed admission for students at the community college. For particularly those who just graduated from high school, they can do guaranteed admissions for the future by following a certain set of coursework and maintaining GPA. And we can track them as soon as they say they are starting at the community college and they want to be able to pursue, where we can follow up to help reduce the amount of time that they're at the community college to be able to come in to the CSU. So it's realizing that not all of our students will have the ability to come in as a first-time freshman, but that there are multiple pathways to come into the CSU, and how can we help support the students throughout their whole journey, whichever pathway they take.
Well, immense gratitude to both of you for sharing your experience. Excited to be able to follow along with you as you continue to scale your programs. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mark Duffy to share the work that he has been doing on his typology of admissions innovation.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for this opportunity to share all this with you. I am a research associate, senior research associate at Research for Action. And Research for Action, I just wanted to do a little introduction, is a Philadelphia-based organization that partners with education change agents to design and implement actionable research and evaluation projects and disseminate empirical evidence to catalyze the development and scale of just education programs, policies, and systems. And we're working with the Lumina Foundation to conduct research on the national landscape around state and system level admissions innovations and gather lessons learned from the work of Great Admissions Redesign implementation grantees. And so today I'm going to be talking through a landscape typology that we're developing to try to help the larger field understand the very swift changes that have been happening. If we want to go to the next slide. So as has been said, over the last decade, and especially in the last few years, states and post-secondary systems and policymakers have developed new admissions innovations with the goal of increasing post-secondary access and institutional enrollment by simplifying the admissions process. The real speed with which these admissions innovations have developed in state and post-secondary systems across the country has made it really challenging to keep up and for the field to really document and understand the scope of these reforms. And terms such as direct, guaranteed, automatic admissions have been used interchangeably without really a shared set of definitions and characteristics of what all of this means. And so to address this need in the field, Research for Action is proposing a typology of post-secondary admissions innovations based on a review of the literature, a landscape scan looking at policies across states and systems involved in the work as of the spring of 2025, and also conducting interviews with a sample of policymakers in states where innovations are taking place and are being developed. So we recognize that the work in this area is evolving. There's change almost every day as more and more states and systems become involved and policies are developed and adapted and changed. But we offer this typology and the associated brief that was included for those who registered as an initial way to better understand and try to make sense of the innovations that are happening in the field and help to highlight for policymakers and practitioners, what the different options are in this work. This is still a work in progress, and so if you have questions or feedback about the typology, at the end of this presentation, we'll actually be doing a really short 2-question poll to get your initial sense. And then my contact information will be included as well. So if you'd like to, you can reach out to me with further questions and feedback. Okay, next slide. Great. So the typology is organized around 4 key components that are derived from the work of Taylor Odell and Jennifer Delaney in 2023, who identified strategies that can alter college-going behaviors. So the first is that early guarantee of college admission, that students understand they're going to be admitted to an institution, whether it's 2-year, 4-year. They know they're admitted somewhere early in the process. A structural simplification of the application, so you're not filling out the complete application. That comes in many different forms, but there's some kind of simplification of the application process. And then the proactive information that's going out to students, letting them know that they have these college opportunities, especially for students who may not have thought of themselves as on the college track. And then providing modest financial support through application fee waivers, which can often be a barrier to students deciding whether or not they're going to apply to an institution. We also recognize there are many institution level admissions innovations going on, but at this point they fall outside the scope of the analysis that we include in the brief related to this presentation. And we're really focusing on state and system level change. We also recognize there are a number of transfer innovations that are taking place, and those will be explored in a later report as part of a toolkit that we're developing for release in the spring to the larger field that will provide more on the typology and updated typology, but also a number of other tools that will hopefully be helpful to the field. Next slide. Okay, so to start to talk about the typology itself, again, in conducting a literature and landscape scan of post-secondary admissions innovations at the state and system level, we identified 7 types of policies around admissions innovation. These are the first 2, but we'll discuss each one individually. So the first is the term that is commonly used for really all admissions innovations, which is direct admissions, which we're defining as high school students being proactively notified by a state post-secondary agency or system of their acceptance to at least 1, 2, or 4-year institution based on academic criteria, most commonly GPA, but also many others. And the selection, and then students can select the institution of their choice by completing a simplified application process with a fee waiver. So you have all 4 of Odell and Delaney's strategies included in direct admission. You have proactive notification, early acceptance, a simplified application process, and a fee waiver. So as has been mentioned, Idaho was the first really to move in this area and provides a good example of direct admissions, although there are others. But through Idaho Campus Choice, every high school student graduating as senior is assured acceptance to a state-funded post-secondary institution, and students are proactively receiving letters notifying them of the institutions that have accepted them. And then through Apply Idaho, participating students can apply online for free to 1 or more of the Idaho Campus Choice institutions through a streamlined process. So that provides, one example of direct admissions. Then the second type that we identified is similar, but the nuances in these, the changes or the differences in these different types are really quite nuanced. Through informed admissions, similar to direct admissions, high school students are again proactively notified by a state post-secondary agency or system that they'll be admitted to at least 1, 2, or 4-year institution based on their academic criteria, but are required to complete a traditional application process. So the regular application needs to be completed often with a fee waiver in at least some cases, not necessarily for all students, but for perhaps students who who identify financial need. So again, this type of innovation includes assured early admission, proactive notification, and application fee waivers for at least some students. I would argue that the work being done in Minnesota provides an example of this type. In that case, graduating seniors are proactively notified of their state post-secondary options, but students must complete an application for each of the college and universities they have expressed interest in attending. And then participating high schools notify families of the participation in the program and allow them to opt in, which has been mentioned as a key part of this for many states, that opt-in part. Next slide, please. Okay. So the State University of New York, the SUNY system, has developed a really interesting type of innovation that they termed cascading admissions through their SUNY Match program. High school students applying to a four-year institution in their state post-secondary system who have applied but are not accepted to any of the institutions where they apply are alternatively offered admission to at least one other institution in that same SUNY system based on their academic criteria and areas of interest. And so through the SUNY match, admission is assured early, and the application fee is waived for those additional campuses where they're offered admission. So really interesting variation and type there. Then the next is invitational admissions. And here, high school students are proactively notified by the state post-secondary agency or system of their eligibility for admission to a four-year institution based on academic criteria and encouraged to apply, but there is not assurance of admission. There's an invitation to apply. So for example, the University of Hawaii Fast Pass Initiative notifies eligible students of the program, inviting them to apply to the University of Hawaii at Manoa without a guarantee of admissions. And there are other institutions in the state that have a different version of that. But for that institution, we identified as invitational admissions. And then the next three are self-reported, guaranteed, and systems admissions. Some of these have been talked about in different ways by other folks on this call. So through self-reported admissions, students are assured of admission early. High school students enter limited academic information such as GPA into an online questionnaire or portal to determine acceptance, after which they complete an application to institutions where they've been accepted. And so the Connecticut Automatic Admissions Program, which was mentioned, provides an example of this. It's a portal in partnership with the Common App managed by the Connecticut State Colleges and University System. And through this program, high school seniors can get admission offers from institutions in the state if they meet the program's GPA requirements. Similarly, Admit Utah is a website sponsored by the Utah System of Higher Education that shows prospective students which state post-secondary institutions will ensure their admission. And students can answer just a few questions about themselves, GPA, the high school they are graduating from, and the website will then generate a list of one or more of the public community colleges and universities where they're ensured admission. Next is guaranteed admissions, which has also been mentioned. Texas is the common example of this, where the program assures high school student admission to one or more four-year institution if they apply and meet the established academic criteria. So under the Texas top 10% rule, perhaps the best known guaranteed admission program, a student is eligible for admission to a Texas public college or university as an undergraduate student if the student earned a GPA in the top 10% of their high school graduating class. And then the University of Texas at Austin has a little bit more competitive set of requirements based on their high demand to attend the institution. And then finally, systems admissions allows high school students to apply to multiple institutions in the same post-secondary system with a single application, thereby simplifying the application process. And so both the University of California and California State University systems provide examples of this, allowing students to apply to all campuses with a single application. Apply Montana and Apply Texas websites also provide a single application for students to apply to multiple state institutions. And so that lays out the 7 types that we've identified in our research. If we want to go to the next slide. But there's also a number of other considerations in admissions innovation. You know, as we've already talked about, these vary in many different ways. And so these differences in the innovation components create options for state and system policymakers to weigh around program scope, the data sources that will be used, whether and to what degree to have fee waivers, the eligibility criteria, and the program, whether or not to have program opt-in. And so in terms of scope of admissions innovations, it can vary by the range of school districts or individual high schools involved. It could be all or just a portion. The types of post-secondary institutions involved. There are some types that only include 2-year, some both 2-year and 4-year. Some include flagship universities, others don't. Some include private institutions. And so there's lots of different variation there. And then whether participation in the program is simply up to individual students to determine through submitting an application, or whether the state or system is notifying proactively. So that's the scope piece. And then in order to determine whether a potential student is eligible for admission, of course, the innovations that include proactive notification, so direct, informed, and invitational, require existing student achievement data, whereas cascading, self-reported, guaranteed, and system admissions don't require this, as they're still getting their information through an application. State and system admissions innovation programs have utilized a number of different sources, including longitudinal data systems, data sharing agreements, requesting that their state Department of Education or individual high schools identify eligible students, partnering with state financial aid agencies, and working with individual data vendors. But of course, as has been mentioned, it's important to figure out those data sources. And then application fees, of course, present a barrier to accessing a post-secondary education for many students and can dissuade students from applying. So to address this issue, the application fee is often waived, sometimes for all students, but in other cases for a portion of students who can identify financial need, or sometimes during a particular period in the admissions process, perhaps during a college application week or a particular month. And then to determine whether a student is eligible for post-secondary admission through one of these innovations, states and systems have to determine what admissions eligibility criteria they're going to use, including the indicators and thresholds that will be established, either across the entire state or system, or by individual institution. And so common eligibility indicators are high school GPA, SAT or ACT scores, courses completed or course grades, as well as a number of others, but those are the common ones. And then further, states and systems can either establish common achievement thresholds or allow thresholds to vary by institution. And then finally, as was mentioned, to address common issues around limited data access, states are often using opt-in so that students can determine, as well as high schools or districts, whether to participate and share individual data. And then finally, as was mentioned, states and system admissions vary in terms of whether or not policy is leveraged, and then the degree to which and how student financial aid opportunities will be identified as part of the process. Next slide. So just to round out, again, due to the variation in admissions innovations, state and systems have lots of decision points to consider. Will the innovations being considered to require changes in policy? What will be the scope of the policy in terms of the number of districts and post-secondary institutions involved? Will admissions criteria be common or vary across institutions? And what will be the criteria and thresholds? How will students be identified as eligible for these programs? Will students be notified proactively about admissions eligibility, or will the students start the process through submitting an application? Will the program offer admission to students or only notify students of their eligibility for admission without a guarantee. What will the application process require from students, and in what ways, if any, will it be simplified? Will opt-in be used? Will application waivers be a part of the process? And how and to what degree will they offer financial aid information? So lots of different variation. Hopefully this this analysis is helpful to kind of provide a national scope for what these admissions innovations have looked like. We can go to the next slide. So we're going to have a quick question poll that's going to be put up. And then if you have questions or want to provide feedback on the typology, you can go ahead and email me at the email listed. But I'll let you all complete the questionnaire quickly to see what you thought of the typology. And thank you so much for the time to present it.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Mark. I get so energized hearing from our grantees. So huge thank you to Daniela and to Ginger for sharing all of their incredible successes. I remember looking at Texas's application, and while it was a planning grant, as Daniela said, they completely hit it out of the park and implemented statewide within a year. So huge thank you to Texas, and I'm so excited to watch their work continue. And then Ginger, your pilot with Riverside is incredible. I mean, an anticipated 30% increase in student enrollments from Riverside County into the CSU in a single year is really, really exciting. And huge thank you to Lauren and the team at ESG, and for all of distilling all of those learnings, and to Mark for really thinking through that typology. It was really fascinating. So all of that to say, thank you so much to everyone. I wanted to share a little bit about what's coming next with Great Admissions Redesign work. And so the biggest thing to note is that we will be launching another round of Great Admissions Redesign funding on September 29th. And so please be on the lookout for a webinar that on that day to talk about things like eligibility, funding amounts, and what type of projects we're looking for. You can use this QR code to access that save the date registration. And all of the resources that we talked about today. Another thing is Lumina will be doing a live podcast on September 4th, where we'll be hearing from, again, myself, and then another slate of grantees from across the country to talk about all of the things they're doing in the admissions redesign space. So lots more to learn, lots more to come, but we encourage you to kind of please check back on our website, save the date for these upcoming items, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And with that, Lauren, anything else?
That is all. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Right.
Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.